Hello, good evening, and welcome to this, a very special festive TooFatLardies Oddcast. And this evening, and you'll know, behind our window for the 24th of December, with me, I'm joined by both Santa and Rudolph, and that is, of course, Nick Skinner and Richard Clark. Gentlemen, a very merry welcome to the Christmas Oddcast.
Ho, 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 Sydney.
No, ho, ho, ho from me. Otherwise that makes me Rudolph.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I'm the one with a red nose.
I didn't like to say that.
Well, it's going to be even redder because here we are in the great hall of Lard Island amidst boughs of holly and
I think
Christmas
that's boughs
trees.
of holly, Sid.
I'd spent
all
ages.
those ships we've had, especially this bow here, bow there.
I spent ages tying that holly in a bow. Never mind. That was wasted. Anyway, Christmas trees and in front of a roaring fire. And if the weather outside is frightful, hopefully you'll find the conversation more than delightful. Oh.
Who writes your stuff? Sydney?
So, sherry, anyone?
Yes, please, thank you.
Lovely, thank you, yeah.
There we go. Fantastic. So, it's Christmas.
It's Christmas! Oh, sorry, that was somebody else.
It's our 24th window in the TooFatLardies seasonal Advent Calendar. We've had an amazing month so far. But, chaps, tell me what you've been up to since we last met.
Listening to the TooFatLardies Advent Oddcast.
Yeah, the Advent calendar has...
Finding out what you think about me, Sid.
Yeah, exactly. A few home truths there, I felt.
Well, it was all honest stuff. I enjoyed listening to it, even though I knew what I was going to say. I still listened to my bit. I did find your bits very interesting.
Well, it was interesting because obviously we all knew what we were saying, but we didn't know what other people were saying, so it was quite illuminating. I had to listen to the whole lot because I edited them, but it was still quite fun to replay them back and listen to them again.
Yeah.
Because my memory's so bad, it felt like I was hearing it for the first time.
You know, for certain things receive more attention than others. People were quite surprised to hear that you, an Englishman,
don't like tea.
Drink tea. Richard.
Yeah, I hate tea. Yeah, loathe it. My mother used to get me to make tea for her when I was a very small child, and the smell of it as a tiny tot put me off. And that's it. Never liked it since.
I love a cup of tea, especially at breakfast time. I find in hotels, in fact, fewer and fewer people seem to have tea at breakfast. When I look round the hotel restaurant, it's very often people having coffee.
Yeah.
Fewer people having tea. But I stick to traditions.
That's good. As we found out when we listened to what you'd have for breakfast.
Yeah, unlike your weirdy breakfast.
Healthy, that's what it is. Anyway, if you've not listened to the rest of the Oddcast, dear listeners, then the Advent Calendar, it'll be up for some time, and you can still listen to it, no doubt, in April or July or whenever it is.
We'll be running it again next year, but we've never had long enough to forget.
We'll just change the order.
Now, in addition to our online Advent Calendar,
Yeah.
you've actually been doing something a bit more tangible, which is the Lard magazine. So I thought you might like to, let's chat about that.
Yeah.
It looks absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's big. Yeah, do you know what? This Lard magazine is superb, and one of the reasons that I think it's really noteworthy is the number of international superstars. Well, the international content. We've had contributions from all over the place. We've got some new people as well writing for us for the very first time, sending in their contributions. There's a great pint-sized campaign in there that Mark has done on Operation Totten Sontag, around Operation Crusader. Fantastic article around that. There's some usual bits and pieces in there supporting Chain of Command, Sharp Practice, Kiss Me Hardy is in there as well, which is always nice. I always like to see some of the old favourites in there.
Very diverse content, I felt.
IBSM, we've got, I think, a good selection. And because it's come from people other than ourselves primarily, it's actually a really nice, natural mix to the content. And it's been really good to put together. So, we should say thank you to everybody who sent their pieces in, who's got them in, because you've really made the magazine, I think, one of the best ones we've produced.
Yeah, that's certainly the feedback that we're getting, is that people are really loving it. So if you haven't got your copy yet, it's just time to buy one for Christmas.
I thought it was terrific. I really, really liked it. I mean, I am completely biased, but I really liked it. And I remember when we first started the summer specials and the Christmas specials, it was like, how many articles can we write and then just put somebody else's name on it? Or can we just write 4 or 5 different articles about making terrain or something like that? And we just kind of cranked it out ourselves. And it is really nice to see other people joining.
Long time ago, 2004,
right.
summer was the first one. At that point in time, the reason we did it was because there were no scenario supplements or anything like that for any of our rules, and we wanted to support people by providing that. And the thing was that actually at the time, people used to say there are never any articles in Wargames magazines with scenarios for your rules in. Yeah. So we thought, well, we'll have to do it ourselves, because getting for any new business, I found it incredibly difficult to get coverage in the Wargames hobby press. Really difficult. The idea you'd approach, any of the magazines that were around then and say, look, here's a scenario for these rules. They'd say, well, we've never heard of the rules, so we're not going to run it. And it's almost a chicken and egg situation. You think, well, how are people going to hear of the rules if you're never going to run a blooming article? So anyway, we thought, well, let's do the show right here and now, kids. And we did it ourselves. And I think the first one was a bit rough and ready. Well, I think the first dozen were probably a bit rough and ready. But the content was of good quality.
I think that's it. You go back and you look at them, and the photos, they are a bit rough and ready, but actually the content's really, really good. I mean, Derek and his index of the articles, that's really useful for going back and finding all sorts of stuff. And there's loads of times when I think all three of us have looked back and said, oh, has anyone written anything on the German, I don't know, Freikorps? And there's an article on that. Or is it something about Sardinian War of, I don't know, Cream Eclairs or something? Oh yeah, somebody's written one of those as well.
Nice,
I think that was your article.
Yeah, the thing is, people say to me now, have we done this? And I can't remember, because we've been doing it now for so long, so much content, that actually I can't remember a lot of the stuff that's in specials. So things like Derek, where he's done that indexing, is really, really
Where is that?
It's probably on Derek's word poster. It's on the forum. It's on the live forum.
Right. Yeah. And it's an index of all the articles in all the magazines.
That's right. Derek's just kept it up to date over the years.
I dropped my glasses. Said you were quite right in your advent calendar. Well, you said I play with my glasses.
Stop messing around with that.
I'm sorry, mate.
That's the second warning in the month.
But also the thing about the specials when we first started, we didn't have that many rule sets to support. We had 4 or 5 maybe.
Time for the World, Kiss Me Hardy.
Yeah. Bag the Hum early.
Yeah, Bag the Hum. I've Shot Mum, obviously. That was it, really.
And now, of course, we've got so many products in the stable that actually it's impossible to put stuff in to support them all. And we try to do that, but obviously there are some that are more popular or more, important, or are played more than others. So it's always nice, by the way, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're playing what we would call one of the more niche rule sets, so something like Triumph of the Will. If you're playing that, we'd really love to hear what you're doing with it and how you're playing it.
I have to pick you up on something you said there about, there are more important rule sets. Actually, I don't think there are. It's just a case of the content that people send us, isn't it, really? If people send us an article for one of the more obscure rule sets from back in the dark, distant past, we'll run it. Because we love to cover some of the rules that don't get the coverage that others do. And I think that's one of the strengths of the special. When you're producing something that, on average is about 130, 140, 150 pages, sometimes more, you've got room to cover some of the oddities that are out there. You don't just have to go for the top 3.
And I must say, I used to write a lot for the specials. I mean, the thing that I did on the Stoss Trooper and stuff, I mean, that was too long for any magazine article.
No, that's right.
And it was kind of too eclectic as well, I think. I can't remember that many people reading it. But it gave me a lot of time to actually set out a lot of things about it, which I thought was sort of interesting. And that, I think, for anyone who's writing for a magazine, which is an online magazine, that's one thing you have. You have a lot of space. You don't need to fit it into a particular page count.
Totally agree.
You can actually write something which is longer, or thread 2 or 3 scenarios together. And that, for anyone who's just finding their footsteps into anything published, I mean, is a really great sort of attraction of the specials. And that's carried through in what people have written in the Lard magazine. I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. Talking of top 5s or top 3s or whatever I just mentioned, news in earlier this month was that I'd like to mention was the fact that Chain of Command came second in the War Games Illustrated Best Rules category this year, behind Frostgrave.
Oh.
So, congratulations to Frostgrave. Great to see that doing well. But really pleased for Chain of Command, having come first for 2 years running. The fact that we've been placed again, and the way I like to view it is we're number one historical rule set. So a great show for Chain of Command there. And as I've said before, one of the things I really like about the War Games Illustrated Award is the fact that people vote for it. It's gamers voting for it. It's not just an award that's been handed out by the great and the good. This is your average gamer getting an opportunity to express their opinions on what they like. So thank you to everybody who voted for Chain of Command in the War Games Illustrated Awards. That is absolutely fabulous to be placed for 3 years running. And I'm really grateful to people for expressing their views in that way.
Well, I think it's a great accolade, and one of the things, Frostgrave is a beautiful rule set. It's a really imaginative set of rules. Yeah. They've just had their release, Perilous Dark, which came out this year, which is very, very good. But one of the things about it is it does have the support of the whole of Osprey Publishing behind it, which is not inconsiderable. No. So for a small business to actually be punching up around there, I think it's a great tribute to both of you. So well done, chaps. Have another glass of sherry.
Yeah, good idea. Also, I thought in that list of cheers, mate. Just top that up a little bit.
I will do.
Charlie Foxtrot also made the list. I know that Colin was absolutely thrilled. He was in the best War Games terrain accessory or building manufacturer. He came in straight in at number 3, mate.
Not half.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that he was absolutely thrilled with that, so he should be. Because his toys are looking resplendent.
Yeah, it's great to see Colin doing so well there. I remember when I first bought one of his kits, he was working full time as a teacher at the time, I think. And he was selling some kits on eBay, and I approached him then and told him how much I liked what he was doing, and it's been great over the years to follow his success, and he's just going from strength to strength when it comes to designing War Games terrain. He's got a fabulous eye for detail.
Yeah, that really comes across.
It really does come through. He's got that artist's eye, and full marks to him there. Well done, mate.
Mm. So moving on from things which you have done to things which you are doing, lots of things on social media about infamy. So,
yeah. Can I just mention something else?
Sure.
Before that, Sid, which I'd like to do with a hint of sadness about this. Meeples and Miniatures.
Yeah.
Meeples and Miniatures, great podcast, run for so many years. I have sponsored, TooFatLardies have sponsored Meeples and Miniatures for a long time. And I think I think some people thought that we did that because we'd get some kind of, benefit from it. But to be honest with you, the benefit that I got from Meeples and Miniatures was the in-depth rules reviews that they did. I don't get an opportunity, as we've discussed behind our windows, I don't get much of an opportunity to play other war games rules because I'm obviously busy designing my own. But what Meeples and Miniatures gave me an opportunity to do was to find out about other rules that were out there, and not just war games rules, we're talking about board games as well. So it did well in terms of it had that crossover. I think in the end it morphed into something that was more gaming than wargaming, which is no bad thing. It's, you've always got that war game content in there.
Well, the overlap is potentially massive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am really sorry to see those guys go, and I just really want to publicly thank Neil, of course, but all the other guys who took part in that, Mike Hobbs, and obviously Mike Whitaker, and really, Dave Laff and all the other guys.
Rich Jones.
Rich Jones, of course, good old Rich. I just really want to publicly thank them all for all their efforts over the years and say how sorry I am to see that come to an end. But clearly, I think Neil had got to the point where his hobby was gaming, and doing the podcast about gaming took up so much of his time, it limited his gaming time. So full marks to him for having the balls to say enough's enough.
Yeah.
And well done, mate, and may your dice rolling always continue to be whatever you want it to be, or some other suitably
well,
bland
and I hope
expression.
we'll see Neil around the sort of Lardy Games days and around the show circuit. And
Yeah, absolutely.
he's a friend of Lard, and it'd be good to do that. But also, I think I really hope that what we can do as a continuing podcast is embody some of that spirit that came through. That
I'm all for spirit, mate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, one of the things we talked about earlier this year, actually, I think it was about February, was about mojo and inspiration.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really, like you both, want to thank Neil, Mike, Dave, Rich for.
Whatever his name is.
Everyone else.
Dave, D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, Titch.
All of them, all the co-hosts. What a great inspiration it's been to wargamers throughout the world, gamers throughout the world, and also anyone setting up a podcast, knowing that actually it is something which we can do and has worked with other people. And that was a really great way of motivating so many other people to do something. So, huge public thank you to Neil in particular for that. I mentioned it on Twitter.
Thank you, guys.
The number of times I've been running, cycling, driving, listening to Neil's voice, it's like too many times, really.
Was that when you came off your bike and injured yourself? You weren't paying attention. That's driving without due care and attention, Sid.
No, that wasn't the time I fell off my bike. That was another time. But,
what were you listening to then, mate?
The sound of me screaming, I think. Anyway, should we move on from road traffic accidents?
Well, I hope we hear more from them at some point. Maybe they may be hanging up the boots on meeples, but I hope we'll still hear their tones across the airwaves.
Well, they'd always be welcome to join us on here for a chit chat, wouldn't they?
But there's only 5 mince pies.
There are, and I hate to tell you.
Because you've beaten them all.
There were 6, I had one already, there's 5 left. So if they're coming, they better get a move on.
Yeah.
I might just have another one now.
Yeah, that's probably wise.
Well, while you move on for your second mince pie, really
nice,
old thing.
These are good.
We will move. Infamy.
Cocaine.
You are infamous when it comes to mince pies. But another infamy is the infamy playtest.
Infamy. They've all got it.
Back to
Infamy said. Yeah, well, busy with infamy, and maybe we can talk about some of this in the workshop. But busy building for infamy as well. I think I've said it before, but most people will go, hey, I think I'm going to do Gauls against Caesarian Romans, and they'll paint the Gauls and their mate will paint the Caesarian Romans. I'm painting 7 different armies because I've got to play test the whole thing. So I'm doing Germans, I'm doing Rhinish Germans, so fairly civilised, totally uncivilised, hairy Germans. I'm doing Gauls, I'm doing Britons, I'm doing Caesarian Romans, I'm doing Imperial Romans, and the list is almost ending.
So, as I'm sure you probably would realise, I'm more interested in the hairy Germans. Whereabouts in Germany they're coming from?
They're actually not near the Rhineland, so they're further across, maybe Swabia.
Why are they more hairy?
Because they haven't met the Roman barbers who worked the other side of the Rhine. The tribes who lived the other side of the Rhine were more Romanised because of their contact with the Romans, but the ones who lived further to the east were just lived in a swamp and didn't have barbers. I mean, I'm paraphrasing there, to be honest. There's a bit more history to it than
remember that bit in the Germani.
Yeah, Tacitus says, no barbers.
See, I described you as a historian.
Yeah.
And I opened the door of the calendar, trying to big him up a little bit, and then he comes out with that. Yeah.
So,
well, that is the basis of my thesis.
well, Dr. Clark, thank you very much for that. And things, Nick, I'm looking to you to finish off the introduction, and I'm thinking Arnhem.
Are you? You're always thinking Arnhem. I'm always thinking, this year has just been Arnhem filled with me. And early next year will be too. Well, Arnhem.
I'm beginning to think that you haven't done any of this work on Arnhem at all. You're just lying.
Well,
You've been on the piss all year.
Most of it's sitting in your in tray, mate, waiting for you to get your big hairy Germans out of the way, so that we can get the Arnhem thing over the line.
Yeah, mea culpa, as they would say in Rome.
Yeah. Yes, Arnhem, Sid. More toys on Arnhem as well, which I can talk about later as well.
Okay.
And an interesting
Are they in the workshop,
project
mate?
that I'm working on New Year.
Are they in the workshop?
I've got some Arnhem stuff in the workshop.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we stop that discussion now?
So no more mince pies. Let's mince across.
Let's save the mince pies which are left for later,
Yeah.
and let's wander across the
4
workshop.
left now.
catch up on what we've been building.
Yeah.
And while we do that, let's listen to a word from our sponsors.
The eagles have gone. Britain lies defenseless in a cruel world. Since the birth of our Lord, it has been 456 years. What sins have we committed to bring this punishment to Britain? I speak, of course, of the Saxons. They came as allies, but now they seek conquest. The lands of the Britons lie ravaged before them. Blood runs red in our island. We need a leader to stand against them. We need a man to bring together the Britons in common cause. We seek a Dux Britanniarum.
Right, that's enough of that. Dux Britanniarum from TooFatLardies. They really are very good.
Let me get this door open. Oh, well, we're just about in the workshop. Oh, my Lord. It's just like I can't even get in here for the boxes.
Mind yourself, Sidney.
Oh, it's just as messy as ever. Come on, right. What on earth is going on in here? I'm seeing...
Tanks.
Well, I'm seeing that and everything else, but why don't we start with the tanks?
Tanks.
What on earth are you doing?
Tanks. I've been making tanks.
For the memories.
Yeah, tanks and memories. I've been expanding my British armour and getting some tanks in for a new project that I'm working on for PolderCon. PolderCon.
In the Netherlands?
In the Netherlands.
Tell me more about
Well, I
PolderCon.
shall be going to PolderCon in February, where I will be running a game with Jasper from Warbands.
No.
Soldier and Strategy.
The club father.
Yeah, he and I are running a game set on the Arnhem perimeter,
No.
which involves Shah B tanks as Flampanzer.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we're
Sexy,
testing that. So
sexy.
obviously we don't get to play together while we're testing this. So I've got some Shahs to test them from my end, and yet Jasper is creating the toys to play the game from his end, and he will be taking his toys to PolderCon, and mine will just stay here. But I've taken the opportunity to get some Shahs, and so at
So
the
you're
risk of
building-
playing an old record. Yep.
You're building tanks
Yeah.
for PolderCon that you're
Yeah.
not going to take with you.
Correct. But the good news for you, mate, is that you're going to be playing that game before I go to PolderCon, because we're going to be talking about playtesting, and we want to make sure that game actually works. We don't get it out on the day and say, "Da-da, here's the game. Oh dear, it doesn't work." We'll get it out a few weeks before and say, "Da-da, here's the game. Oh dear, it doesn't work." How the hell do we make it work? So there's going to be some Flampanzer in that game. So I've got some 3D printed Shahs.
Yeah.
Right.
Which,
They look very nice.
Well, they're 1/48 Sid, so they've been printed by Gary at Paint and Glue Miniatures. Now, what I didn't realise with this, I've been on a bit of a learning curve with 3D, as I'm sure many people will know. What I didn't realise is that when they print things in sort of the bigger scales in 1/48, what they often do is they take a scaled up version of something that's in a much smaller scale, like 1/100th or something. Now, when they do that, what happens, of course, is some the model is larger, but also the little parts of the model which are perhaps a little oversized in the smaller scales become even more oversized in the bigger scales. So think, for instance, of a 37mm cannon. You can see, look on that Shah there, it's got quite a big, fat, sticky out 37mm cannon.
Yes.
Much thicker than the 37mm cannon should be.
Yes,
for that scale.
oversized.
Yeah,
It does look
oversized.
like it's shooting out tennis balls.
It does,
doesn't
doesn't it? Like a sort of a water cannon.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing here is I've got some stuff that I got off eBay from Poland. There's a guy who's selling 1/48 scale metal barrels that are obviously in the right scale for what I want, and it's just a case of grabbing some of those barrels about 150. He sells them for about £1.50 each, £2 each, something like that. buy them in, snip off the fat water cannon barrel and stick this 37mm barrel on there.
Very nice.
So they're going to look really nice. And I'm looking forward to getting those done up for late war German colours for the Ireland game. One of them's going to be a flam Panzer, the other one's going to be a normal Panzer. I think we're still just working that bit out. So they're great. And then I've got some other tanks here. So we've got a whole pile of Shermans, and I've got 5 Shermans there and 4 Cromwells as well. Took advantage of the Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg Miniatures did a buy one get one free sale for Black Friday.
Yeah.
So I was able to get effectively a whole troop of Shermans, three 75mm Shermans plus a Firefly,
Right.
and 4 Cromwells as well
Good Lord.
in that same scale to really bolster the amount of tanks we've got for that.
You robbed a bank.
Yeah, well, buy one get one free, mate.
Yeah.
So you've got 7 tanks.
Yeah, well, no, I've got more than that. I've got 8 tanks.
I was going to say, that's good going. Can I have 3.5 tanks, please, mister?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
So, and
What's
again,
counting?
they're from Blitzkrieg 148. It's really nice. The great thing about Blitzkrieg, the Cromwells at Blitzkrieg, is of course the hatches come separately, so you can have the hatches open or closed.
Nice.
Which is a great option for when you put commanders in.
in.
I love adding commanders.
Is that turret hatches or hull hatches?
No, only turret hatches.
Turret, right.
Only
Okay.
turret hatches.
And is that the same on the Shermans?
The Shermans, frustratingly, the turrets are all buttoned down.
Oh, no.
So you can't add crew to the Shermans. So that's annoying. The best way I found for Shermans actually is because the Corgi Shermans are also die cast. You can't,
No.
I know from your experience, you can't. You try to drill out a turret on.
I did one. It took me 2 days. It was the most tedious experience of my entire life. I'll tell you what I think is a nice little solution. Get a penny,
Yeah, it works.
put a little magnet, drill a hole in the top of the turret, and put a little magnet in, and then put a penny, attach the hatches to the side of the penny, and put the tank commander on, and then
Nice.
put the penny on top of the
on
tank,
top.
magnetise, and that gives you your tank commander.
Yeah, it works. You can do that.
good way of doing
That
it.
would work. But I think with the Cromwells are really nice. You can put the crew on it, and people moan about 148 being out of scale, but when you put
No, it's
what
not.
are apparently 156 soldiers in the turrets, they look absolutely
looks fine.
spot on.
People talk about 156, 28mm, as though the figure is 28mm. Normally, they're sculpted 28mm to eye, not 28mm to the top of the head. And the other thing you have to remember is that we normally base them on a base, which I don't know how thick that is, but it's another 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes a 1/4 of an inch the way some people base them, so you're really looking at a figure that's probably near a 32mm.
Well, I do. I quite like making models as well, so I buy quite a lot of 148 models to go with these these ranges. And a lot of the models come with commanders, and of course the commanders are also made in 148 scale.
Yeah.
What I find is to sometimes make the heads look more interesting. You snip off the head from the model that comes in the pack, and you stick another head on from an artisan figure. And the artisan head is bigger than the one you just cut off, even though it's supposed to be in a smaller scale, and it actually looks nicer that way. So they're going to get anyway. The Shah's going to look fantastic. We've got these 8 British tanks that are going to look great, and I've got one other thing, Sydney, that you're going to love. I know you're into. You remember the pink tickler?
I do. How can I?
You remember the pink tickler? Well, here we are. This is a bulldozer blade that fits on a Corgi Sherman.
That looks splendid.
It's made,
Yeah.
out of 3D by.
But it's not pink, it's green.
No, well, it's green now.
But
But when it came, it was Labrador Turd Brown. I think was the label that Paul put on it. So this was done by
Is this Mr. Edwards
a
again?
friend of the show, Paul Edwards,
Fantastic.
who's actually printed some really superb stuff in 3D. He sent me through some other bits that he's been doing. He's done some fencing, which is absolutely brilliant.
That looks absolutely superb. Have you got some of that?
Yeah, I've got some links of that.
Well, I've seen.
It's
I mean,
not what
Paul
you know,
has
it's
been
who you know.
cranking
Have you
it
cashed
out.
the wife's insurance in?
I'll cash the wife in. I've given my wife to Paul and he's given me value in fencing. I thought I'd put back 3 bits.
I'm not going to make any comment about who's got the best deal about that.
I've got a bulldozer blade.
Yeah.
And the thing about a bulldozer blade is you can't magnetising it. So actually you can put it on a Corgi Sherman. When you want a bulldozer blade on the front, when you don't, you just take it off. Because, funnily enough, there aren't that many games that need a bulldozer Sherman. But when you're playing Get That Wreck Off the Road on the way up to Army,
bulldozer blade
you've got to
for
have a
that.
bulldozer blade to really get into the spirit of the way that game
I
works.
totally agree.
Yeah, so all of that stuff and the whole
What a lovely
3D.
model. And as you say, it fits beautifully on the front of that corgi.
Well, it took us a couple of goes.
The tank, not the dog.
Yeah, no. Paul printed one. I gave him some measurements because the Corgi Sherman's 150th. I gave him some measurements. He sent out a trial version, which was great, fitted beautifully, but the arms were a bit short. The arms are supposed to fit to the middle set of bogies, and I think I've given him the wrong calculation there. So he went away, had another go with it, made it from a slightly different resin, changed the measurements slightly, it's come back a lot tougher, and a perfect fit. Really pleased with it.
It looks splendid.
Yeah,
it's
it's absolutely going to look when it's.
I think Paul's got potentially a great little business there. He's, I think he's kind of, I don't know, I might be speaking out of turn, but I get the impression he's kind of in that halfway house between running a few things off for mates and starting to actually think about making a business. Yeah. And I think the quality of what he's producing is absolutely superb. I mean, the bases that I've seen him doing for people, already textured bases for pennies.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea.
Is a fabulous idea.
Well, that is fantastic. And you're talking about textured bases, when you've been busy basing, goodness knows what here. I mean, talking about
Germans everywhere.
Well, what on earth is going on with all these Germans?
My hairy Germans. I've finished them actually. I've finished my cavalry, which are over there on that shelf up there. You can see that's all my Germanic cavalry.
A lot. How many are there? There must be 50.
A Laura cavalry. That's actually the Germans and the Romans.
Okay.
So it looks a lot more than it is. So I think
they all look the same from this distance.
I think it's about 26 figures up there.
And what figures are they?
These are Foundry. Here, look, here's some with just a black undercoat on.
Well, I'm just holding. I mean, these are absolutely superb. I mean, this must be about 15, 20 years old.
Yeah, stunning.
These sculpts,
They're
but
stunning.
they are absolutely stunning.
I made the error.
Roach on a horse, that is.
It is, isn't it? I made the error of buying plastic figures, and was very disappointed to see that they had totally the wrong armament. Totally the wrong armament. They were effectively just Celts with new heads put on. So buy cheap, buy twice. That's what my mother always used to say before she became a lunatic, and died. I really did make that error there. So I've had to go through and replace all of my Germans. And Foundry has been the way I've gone. And I am having a real love affair with Foundry. I've just bought all my Gauls from them, which I'm working on as well. You can see them over there. They're at undercoat stage. And I've also bought some more Caesarian Romans from them. And I'm also getting my British. Well, I've got my British from them. I've supplemented my Gauls with Crusader because Crusader miniatures do some lovely Gauls in chainmail.
So there's a number of reasons why I really like these. They are just much more the old classic 25-28mm. They're not hugely oversized.
No.
They are slightly of that Perry, Sims, Coppleston exaggerated sort
Let me
of
squeeze by.
but not by a lot.
I love the
I'll show
personally,
you
I
a
love the
comparison.
horses.
The horses
the
are perfect.
animation of the horses.
They're
is
quite
really
small,
lovely.
they're pony-like, they're not sort of racing thoroughbreds.
Yeah.
And they've also got a really great template that you can rank them up. So they've got a small base under the horse.
Yeah.
They are easy to sort of put into lines on a base. I mean, not that you're going to necessarily have them in close order, but if you want to rank them up together, you'd get a lot on a base with those. They
Let me
just
show
look
you
fantastic.
by comparison. Plastic Victrix Gaul.
This will work well on an audio podcast.
Well, I'm not showing them. I'm showing you, pair of idiots. That is a lovely sculpt and a lovely figure, but I would suggest I couldn't possibly use it alongside those.
There's something which is feral, tribal, wild,
There is about the Foundry
barbarian
ones.
about the Foundry ones.
Totally.
And there is something which is much more ordered, armoured, and civilised
Did you put this together
about the
yourself?
Gaulish.
Yeah, I did.
Have you
Victrix
ever made
figure.
a model before in your life?
Not done it that well, have I?
Well, to be fair, you've not done it that well, but actually you've done it perfectly reasonably. You know, it's not been put together by a master craftsman. You can tell that. But it's having said that, even if it were, it would still not have the vibrancy and the life that that the Foundry figure
No,
has.
I mean,
the
what-
horse looks a bit weird.
What I feel about
Bit
this
elongated.
is, yeah, well, it's that part of that is the stride of the horse in this.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
What I do feel about all these plastic figures is when you stick them together, they always look slightly odd. They're not in a natural pose, whereas the Foundry metal figures have got life and character to them, because the sculptor, who's far more artistic than I am, has decided that's the look that he wants to achieve.
Yeah.
Whereas sticking this together is me plonking arms onto a figure and really not really having that eye for detail. So I'm not doing as good a job of posing this man as the sculptor does with those metal figures.
Yeah.
So this figure here, that's where that's going.
I think that's almost landed in the tree.
They bounce.
And I'm redoing all of them with metal Foundry.
Okay, but yeah,
That's our review of the day done.
Wow. There we go.
Dice, he throws dice. Where else can we go?
Well, I've been doing other Foundry figures. I mean, more 17th century, and I've been doing some Foundry cavalry, and they are just great. I mean, even though the ranges are old, I do find the mould line slightly heavy, which has led to my hobby-related injury, which we'll come on to.
We've got a section on Sydney stabs himself.
Section of Sydney stabs himself.
Wounds of the week.
So
Great gashes of our
in
time.
Let's move swiftly on from that. So I managed
I had that in Betamax.
Well, there was more blood on mine, I tell you, after I slashed my finger with a scalpel trying to clean up my Foundry cavalry.
But the mould lines, Sid, I mean, you are a perfectionist, so mould lines...
There ain't no mould lines on
many,
there.
I would
There
say,
were no
aren't there?
mould lines
How
on the
fussy are
ones
you?
I got.
I'm quite fussy on mould lines. Yeah, I'm quite fussy on mould lines. I should have been taking the mould line off with a file, but I was being lazy and I took it off with a scalpel. And I was thinking about something else and I slipped and cut my finger. But generally, I think even at the risk that it's older castings and there's mould lines and a tiny bit of flash to take off, I'd still take the metal figures over.
Big time. Yeah, big time.
Over plastic. Whether I'd take the metal figure and constantly wounding my finger with a scalpel is another question.
The other
but
thing is,
it's my fault.
I stuck my Gaulish army together, and it took me
It
about
takes time. Yeah.
dozens and dozens of hours.
Yeah.
And now once I've stuck it together, I've decided not to use it. That was a complete waste of my life. I could have been drunk in a ditch somewhere enjoying myself.
You could have been finishing the Arnhem something.
I could have been finishing the Arnhem supplement.
Well, it's interesting though. I think you can put plastic and metal together though. I think having the bits and pieces that comes with plastic gives you such a rich load of things that you can use for
And certainly the heads and swaps and arms. And
Yeah, I would
hands
agree with
and-
that. I would agree with that.
so-
And if you want to do a conversion, the plastic stuff is brilliant. It is brilliant.
absolutely.
It's great.
So we've got some great figures there. Those look superb, Rich, I must say. But I was thinking while we were talking about that, if any of these modelling and hobbying things would make our best bit on the bench for December 2019.
I'll tell you what I'd like to chuck in the ring for that, and it isn't really a best bit on the bench, and it ain't going to win, but I'll chuck it in anyway because I thought it was quite interesting, is this Ron Seal interior varnish.
Does that do what it says on the tin?
It does
Antique
what it
pine.
says on the tin. Now this is antique pine. I think I might have gone a little bit light with antique pine. Bob Connor down in Devon says he uses a different one, teak or something like that. And I thought, I'm going to try this instead of army painter. And I did. And I was quite impressed
What's
with
a
it.
dip?
Yeah, I don't dip it, I put it on the brush though. And this is water based, which means it doesn't bugger your brushes up so much. The coverage is not perfect, but it's 95% of what Army Painter does, and 95% is enough.
So you do your base colours and then you apply that over
I just
top.
put base colours on block colour, so blue trousers, red shirt, pink hat, slap that on, and then once that's dried, I highlight it up. The other thing about this is it dries a lot quicker than Army Painter. Army Painter, I find I have to leave for at least 24 hours before I can paint on top of it. It's a I don't know whether it's oil based or it's based on something synthetic or whatever. It kills otters basically. They don't like you buying it because you might chuck it down the sink as if you're going to spend 20 quid on a pot of stuff and chuck it down the bleeding sink.
I haven't got any otters in my sink.
No, that's because you killed them all with your army painter. So this dries a lot quicker, which I find quite good. And I'm kind of thinking I'm going to go with this, and I can get it from my local DIY shop. This cost me £8, which is half the price of a tin.
Half the price, isn't
Half
it?
the price of a tin
That's
of
a
army
big factor
painting.
because that's you can get a lot of toys for £8.
Yeah.
You can get 2 pints in my local, not in St Albans, admittedly.
Well,
It's worth saying, it's always worth having 2 pints.
it looks fantastic on the naked flesh of the Germans.
Well, that's why I
Using
went
my
with
words
this
carefully.
light colour. So the nudie German geezers, it complements the flesh paint quite nicely. Oh, anyway, it's just something that I thought I'd mention because it's not the best bit on the bench, but I like it. It's pretty good.
I've got something I'm going to nominate for best bit on the bench.
You go for it, Dave.
Well, I said about those gun barrels that you can purchase, metal gun barrels. See, these are from eBay. There's a guy in Poland that supplies them. The service was brilliant. I ordered these things, I think, on the Tuesday. They arrived on the Friday, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, really good service.
Yeah.
And they're lovely. They're precision cut. They're you can't bend them. They're proper. Don't know what they're made from. Proper steel, I guess.
Really?
Yeah, they're brilliant. Really, really good. You can clip them. They're not so tough you can't clip them.
Right. Okay.
So, for instance, where there's a bit of a mantlet that goes over the gun barrel, you need to
yeah.
make the gun barrel a little bit shorter.
Right.
You can just clip quarter of an inch or whatever, it is, 16th of an inch off the end just to make it fit. But they're, it's not just a 30, all kinds of barrels. You've got the whole lot. So if you get a dodgy barrel, so a 20mm flat cannon, or I know in the past we've said about things like Bofors guns. Actually replacing the barrel with a metal barrel actually makes all kinds of sense, and it's so easy to do that I'll really be thinking about that for the future. So again, I don't know if it will be the winner, but I put that in there as something. Just look on eBay. All I put in was 1/48th barrel, and then just took a load of stuff from there.
Well, certainly a contender. I've got a contender as well, but I put silver balls in there. I put silver. Well, I didn't put silver balls.
Where'd you put silver balls, Sid?
Well, I've got them in a big bag at the moment. But these are not
Make
just
your
any
own
old silver balls. These are Agitator Kugel. They're actually small ball bearings that I picked up at Antwerp from PK Pro, and I got 50 balls for €2.95. And you drop 2 of those balls into your Vallejo or other paint pot, shake that up, and it really seems to help keep the paint nice and fluid and flowing.
I've heard about it. So you have to
paint agitators.
You have to put 2 in each jar, do you?
I've been putting 2 in each jar. I might be able to do with 1, but I like having 2 balls in every jar. I wonder why that is.
You put your balls in the paint.
Yeah, no, they give it a good shake. And
they bang together when you shake them.
they do, and then the paint comes out beautifully.
And that really, it does. What happens when you get some paints where it's in the bottle and it's pretty much homogeneous, consistency.
Yeah.
But you get other paints where it's just all water at the top and
that's right.
all gunge at the bottom.
And that was
Can it deal with the gunge?
I think it deals quite well with that.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'll bring some of the balls over. I didn't bring them with me, but I'll bring them over for next time, and we'll have a good shake. We'll get the balls in our bottles, and we'll have a shaking contest.
We'll have a shake off. Shake off. Celebrity shake off.
TooFatLardies shake off. So that's a contender for the best bit of the bench.
Balls a shake off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know.
Well, that'll get people listening and nothing else.
I have heard actually.
Probably the CID.
I think there are other people that do that. I know that. I think Hobbsy does that, for instance. People get little agitators for their paints, and they're really effective. I think they really do a good job. I'd be keen to see how you get on with that.
Yeah. I might. That's the type of thing I would instantly buy. Actually.
Good luck, yeah.
Well,
let's be careful because the last time Sydney suggested something to do with painting was the flow improvement.
Oh, that bollocks! Yeah.
And I've still got flow improvement.
Yeah, well, I swore at it.
What I've noticed about flow improvement is it slows down the speed at which your paint dries. Actually, it seems to be that you put something with flow improver and it takes 5 times longer for it to dry.
Have you got the flow improver, not the flow retarder?
Oh, shut up!
Oh,
Shut up!
Right.
Get on.
So what do we think is the winner of the best
your
bit
balls
of
aren't the best bit on the bench. No.
I didn't expect that they would be.
I'm not quite touched.
What about
I
you?
kind of like your 3D printing, to be honest. I think your
the
dozer blade.
whole concept of 3D printing, the ability to get what you want in the way that you want it, and for the all the bits and pieces that are coming now through the 3D.
It allows you to fight the way you want to fight.
It does, yeah. So 3D printing would be a kind of
So the
overall,
concept of 3D printing is the best bit on the bench.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put that concept on this bench. There we are.
Well,
there it is.
So we found our best bit on the bench.
It's a concept.
Well, if you want the physical, this bulldozer blade
All
and these
fine.
fences.
It's an embodiment of
things that have been printed by Paul Edwards that have been generally added to my collection.
We've moved from concept to specific.
Right.
Paul Edwards is almost our best bit on the bench.
Paul Edwards.
Well, we can't do any better than that.
No, well done, Paul.
The best bit on
not
just the best bit on the bench, but the best bit on the Christmas bench.
Oh, Paul, that is great praise. And after that absolutely fantastic Christmas best bit on the bench, I think it's time to move over to the sofa of sincerity for our big issue of the Christmas Oddcast. Gentlemen, welcome back to the couch of contemplation, and it's time for us to face the scrutiny of this month's big issue. And this is an issue that was flagged up to us recently when we ran our now famous #AskSydney section. We
now famous. At least 8 people have heard of it.
There's 8 more than people normally read my Twitter. Anyway, we had a message from Dice Dad up in Cheshire who said...
Dice Dad is always on here.
Well,
he's always sending stuff.
He's got some very good questions.
Yeah.
Or is he a stalker? Should we be worried about Dice Dad? Do we love him or are we worried about him?
Yeah,
if he's from Cheshire, he's probably a 4-square chap.
Well, there we go. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. It's the Christmas Oddcast.
Yeah. We'll be
Anyway,
kind.
Well, let's see if we can get some other people to send in some decent.
Well, that's all right. Well, what did your stalker ask you?
Yes. I've been asked many things, but Dice Dad in this particular event of stalking asked, I know you're probably sick to the back teeth of questions about release dates and so on, so how about a chat on the Oddcast about the creative process itself and what goes into producing a game? I'm sure others would find it as fascinating as I would.
Not fascinating enough to ask a question about it.
Well, Dice Dad asked the question. I thought it was a really good question, so I think we should talk about
actually, I remember that because when we were talking about the Ask Sydney section as we got lost on the way to Antwerp, we thought that's a bit like saying, what's in the Bible? It's such a huge question that we couldn't really deal with it in an Ask Sydney, but it is a good question,
I mean, creative processes
Well,
starting a new set of rules or starting a new period.
Creative, there's inspiration and perspiration, isn't there? People always talk about that. And when designing a new set of rules, a new game, whatever you want to call it, you can't say, right, Wednesday the 27th of February, I'm going to sit down and start designing a game on combat in the Chaco War of 1936. Because on the 26th of September, you're not, February, whatever the bloody date I came out with, you're probably not going to be inspired about the Chaco War of 1936. It has to be something that comes to you in an almost Damascene manner.
Does it really come in a moment, or is it a build-up over time, or is it things you thought about?
No, it comes in a moment. Comes in a moment. Has to come. The first thought comes in a moment. You can then spend a lot of time thinking about it. So let's take infamy. When we talked, I listened back to the New Year and Christmas podcast from a year ago to see what we were blathering on about and promising we'd achieve in the next 12 months, all of which we singly failed to do. But the thing I was talking about then was infamy, although we didn't call it that at that point in time. I was talking about of Ancient's variant on sharp practice. And so that moment of inspiration had already come to me, and that I kind of left that sat there on a shelf in the back of my mind. And it is almost literally like that. You know it's there. You know it's sat on the shelf. and you just, your mind plays on it when you're walking the dog or you're driving a long distance to a games day or whatever, and you have those moments to yourself where you're thinking about it. And then one day you actually get to put it on the table and see what's going to happen. So that initial inspiration has to come to you. It has to be something you're keen to do. It has to be something that you're inspired by. Otherwise, you won't do it. And what I tend to find happens there, and I don't know about you, Nick, is that you tend to think, "Oh, I like that concept. I bet that will work," or "I like that idea." So with Chain of Command, for example, it was the dice mechanism. I'm thinking, I bet that will work. And what made me think it would work with the Chain of Command is that the single teams activate on a 1. You have to roll a natural 1 for single teams. So it means that some things that are not necessarily part of your platoon, like support teams, will be harder to activate than things that you can add numbers up to get. And that initial thought made me think, this could really work. So that's the end of your inspiration. The rest now is perspiration, of taking that and going through a workshop session where you put the ideas on the table, you put the figures on the table, and you think, right, how's this going to work?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes the thing that doesn't survive that first contact is the initial inspiration.
Yeah.
Is the bit that sometimes doesn't get through.
Totally.
Because you think, well, actually, it was a great idea, but in this instance, for this set of rules, in this situation, it's actually not going to work that well, and you have to sort of drop it. But they stay in your mind for the next time out. And I find quite often with these things that we've worked on, we have a discussion, we have an idea about putting something in, and actually it doesn't happen at that time, but it will happen about 2 or 3 products down the line where we think, oh, hang on a minute, we've already sown this seed of an idea, and it will come back in a slightly different form. So there's all these sort of emergent threads of ideas that weave together, and sometimes you match one up and it really works. It's the matching up process that is ugly.
I agree. Interestingly, I mean, one of the things that I've been playtesting in Infamy is an idea that you first mooted in your gladiator combat game, Balls of Steel. Talking of Sydney's best bit on the bench, and one of the ideas from that, I thought, wow, that will probably work. Now, Balls of Steel is not something that's ever come to fruition, but the time spent that we did spend on faffing about with it and testing our ideas is never wasted. Because those ideas can potentially be a rule mechanism can be used across any period if it's pertinent. So the initial stage, inspiration, followed by perspiration. And perspiration, it is bloody hard work writing a set of rules. To be honest with you, once I got my inspiration for Infamy, I spent a lot of time literally scribbling things down in notebooks because I couldn't type fast enough. The ideas were coming thick and fast. And the problem is, if you don't capture them, you lose them, they go. And then 2 years later you think, oh, blimey, I had that idea, but I never did anything with it. I didn't write it down.
This is really interesting. When do you get to the point that you actually know that you've got a project that you can actually complete? Because I know there are things that you've done in the past, we've all done in the past. We have the inspiration, we've put in the perspiration, and then either real life intervenes, or there's something which comes and we can't get past that blockage in the design process. At what point do you know that it's a runner? And it's not a commercial thing, it's just something is right about the whole project. Even if there's other things to sort out, you know as a project it's going to work. Once you get to that point.
Play way into playtest. You've got to commit a lot of time and effort to it. I mean, we spent 9 months playtesting one set of rules that we thought was going to be a product. We took it around the shows, took it to Salute, took it to Penarth, took it all over the place, running games of it. And in the end, we decided we weren't going to run with it. We didn't do it. So, but at the same time, there's 2 ways of viewing that. You could say, Christ, I've just wasted 9 months of my life on something that's totally non-productive. And you, to a degree, you have. All that time and effort has gone. But it isn't wasted because you're testing ideas and mechanisms out. And that has value in its own right.
It's a really important thing because not everything works first time or second or even third time.
No.
You do get a lot of red herrings, loose ends, false adorns, whatever the word is. There's often you've got to work through that and get to the point that actually you're creating something which is viable.
Boer War, 9 months. Again, 9 months play testing those rules and playing those rules. Couldn't publish them. They had the commercial appeal of, well, crabs, basically.
Well, I'll always take an issue with you on that, because I think that's the best set of rules you've ever
there's
done.
a difference though between producing a set of rules that you can play with and
Yeah.
a set of rules that is commercially
totally
deliverable
different.
and that people can pick up and play with for themselves.
That's a
'Cause it's
fabulous point.
and we still haven't mastered that.
No, of course not.
Because that's
Nobody ever
that's
does.
the whole process of getting something from your head and sowing the
Yeah.
seed in your head in the same way as it is in
I
mine.
bet Michelangelo would say he'd never quite mastered what he was doing. There was a guy.
But he wasn't as good as you, mate.
So let me
He was
just
better at painting ceilings.
Yeah, well, he didn't use a treble O brush.
let me dig away at
He
that.
didn't use that Ronseal interior varnish. If he'd done that,
Yeah.
imagine what the chapel would look like now.
The bill would be less though.
It would. Yeah.
When the bankruptcy, the papacy. Anyway, let me dig away at that point
Alright.
more about the commercial aspect. At what point are you designing something which you're thinking of as a viable commercial product? What point does that start? Or do you start with that as a point from the beginning?
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
You have to these days. We didn't used to. When people, when rules were in black and white, and people were happy to have rules in black and white, you could do, and this is an issue about printing costs more than anything. You could do a limited print run. If I wanted to produce a book in black and white, I could print 100 copies or 1 million copies, and the print cost per unit would always be exactly the same. Once you go into colour, you have got economies of scale that come into play. And realistically, the smallest possible print run you can do in colour is 1,000 copies. And to get a decent price, you really want to be doing multiple thousands. So you really want to be doing 2, 3, if not more, because then economies of scale really come in. Now the question is, are you going to sell 1,000 copies of the Boer War rules? And no, you're not. You're never ever going to sell 1,000 copies of Boer War rules. In the old days, we used to produce things like, if the Lord spares us, First World War, Palestine. That is...
in the days when there were no figures available to
do it.
play it in.
That
or
is
very, very few.
obscure in the extreme, but you could say, right, well, we'll get 400 copies printed and that's fine. We'll get 200 copies printed and that's fine. And you could produce rules that were very, very specific. Now, because the demand is for full colour rules, that means you cannot produce some of these oddities that we used to produce and would love to produce, because the whole issue of costs is totally prohibitive.
So one thing which is interesting me about this, as a person who's never done a commercial set of rules and is probably never likely to, is this sort of
That's a rather
interface.
definite no.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But because
He's crap.
well, there's that as well, which doesn't help.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking about it, on the one hand, there's creative, I understand that. On the other hand, there's commercial. I don't understand that because I've never done it.
No.
But that always seems to me to be like two different horses or serving two different masters.
Well, I'll give you an indication. The front end costs of producing chain of command before we sold a single copy, once you take into account the books and take into account the tokens and take into account whatever else is in there, jump off points and so on and so forth, was 40,000 quid.
So that's a lot of money for anyone.
That's a lot of money, especially when I had 100 quid in the bank at the time. So you were entirely reliant on the sales in the first month to pay the printer at the end of his 30-day term.
So what I'm getting to on that question is, to what extent does the commercial take over from the creative? Can you allow that to happen?
No, you can't.
Does the commercial ever compromise the creative
no.
or historical integrity?
No, it cannot do that. But what it does do is it limits the periods that you can write rule sets for. So, for example, there is a reason why you get black powder. Very, very popular set of rules is a generic set of rules for the black powder period. Sharp Practice is a set of rules generically covering the whole black powder period. And the reason for that is, if you wrote a set of rules for the Franco-Austrian War of 1859, or you wrote a set of rules for the War of 1866, or you wrote a set of rules for the Carlist Wars, it would not sell in sufficient numbers to cover the costs of full colour printing. Therefore, for some periods, you have to write rule sets that are more generic and will cover a whole period of time. Ancients is a good example of that, which is why you tend to get ancient rule sets saying 3000 BC to 1500 AD. Well, we're kind of bucking the trend with Infamy that we're picking on a very, very more specific 150-year period of ancient history. But that is a pretty interesting period. It covers Caesar, it covers all the way through to the end of the 1st century AD. So I would be dubious about your ability to write a set of rules, for example, which just covered the Jewish rebellion in Palestine in the 1st century. You just simply wouldn't sell enough. So
not as a commercial project.
Not as a commercial project. It would be a really interesting thing to do. So you do have to, at the outset, say, if I'm inspired to do a set of rules for this particular period, is that going to wash its own face? I don't mind if I'm inspired by a period breaking even. It's not a great way to do business, but I don't mind it if I'm really inspired by the period. But what I can't do is make a loss, because you've got to eat food and wear clothes.
But there's another aspect to it too, isn't there? Because you're producing a product that's got to appeal to other people.
Yeah.
When you're being creative, then you're creating something that has appeal to you by the very nature of being creative. It's something that motivates and interests you. Yeah. By the time you go through the process of creating something that comes out the other end of that, it's got to be something that's of interest to other people. So one of the ways that commerciality influences the way that rules are developed, I think, is the way that the idea goes from an idea that keeps me happy to a product that keeps you happy. And then there's certain things that have to go with that along the way. So there's certain aspects of what I've got to put into that product that you expect to see in a rule set. So you probably expect to see force tables. You probably expect to see scenario ideas. You probably expect to see the actual mechanic of the game to be surrounded by a whole load of other stuff that packages my idea in a way that sells it to you, so that when you pick up that book on the shelf at Cavalier Books or whatever, or Calendar Books, whatever it is, you can say, wow, I really like that, it's really interesting, I can go for that. I'm not, my creativity that isn't for you, it's what I'm tapping into is what you want to get from the rules. So it's that influences the way that what you do grows and develops. Yeah, does that make sense to you?
That does.
But I would attach a caveat to that. Sometimes it's very easy to give people what they think they want.
Yeah.
It's always 6 inches, sir.
Yeah.
As a wise man once said.
Yeah.
People, if you don't push the envelope, people are always going to be playing games where figures move 6 inches.
Henry Ford said, if I'd given my customers what they really wanted, I'd give them a faster horse.
Well, that's kind of where I'm getting to.
I'm more Betty Ford than
That's kind of where I'm getting to, because to what extent do you actually develop anything in a broader sort of sense if all you're doing is creating projects which are creatively commercial, as opposed to doing something which is creative predominantly, and through time and through expectation of playtesting you create something which actually has commercial merit. Because people are buying into your creative idea.
I think that's key. I think that's absolutely at the core of the design process. I'm designing a set of, and at the outset, when we designed I Ain't Been Shot Mum that very first time, we weren't designing a set of rules for other people. We were designing a set of rules for us, and we honestly thought it would have the commercial attraction of nothing. We thought that people who would enjoy I Ain't Been Shot Mum were people who were pretty serious military historians and people who were in the military. We really didn't think anybody else would get it, and a lot of people didn't at the time. Although we're still having to reprint it now, nearly 20 years later, so clearly people have got it at some point. And that's key. The idea is that I see myself as a pretty average wargaming bloke, and if I create a set of rules that I enjoy, I'm thinking, well, if I enjoy them, other people surely will enjoy them, because I'm just normal Joe blogs.
Because to me, it's the clothing of commerciality which makes the rules visibly attractive, or which allows customers to pick them up. But without that commercial heart in the process, without that individuality or idiosyncrasy of things like troops, weapons and tactics, or early IABSM, people don't necessarily differentiate between your rules or a set of rules and something else. To me, a set of rules has to have something different about it. Otherwise, I might as well just be playing WRG 6th edition H.
I totally agree. One of the things that we've looked at with with the ancient infamy is the fact that when I sat down and did the research, I thought, hold on, this isn't about two sides lining up and fighting a battle across an open field. This is the jungle is not neutral. You know, those dark Germanic forests, they are very much favouring the locals. And as I was reading that, I was thinking Mao, Chairman Mao. This is he's a bad man, Chairman Mao. I was thinking this is the VC operating in the jungle, and the Romans are the free world forces who are out of their comfort zone and really hating every minute of it. And so that, I like to think, is a fairly original take on it, and I hope that the rules that come out of the design process will reflect the fact that it isn't just line them up and hit each other over the head. The rules are about a lot of very, very different things to that. It's about choosing your moment, when to deploy, when not to deploy, how to get your forces psyched up. It's about how to develop the space in which to allow your force to deploy.
So these are creative ideas which have a commercial value because of the way that you've packaged them together in a set of rules. And we know from experience that people enjoy those creative values within the rules. But for me, I think what you're saying, I think both of you, it's the creative process first and the commercial process only second. Yeah. Although I do take the point that they are running side by side, and certainly in some sets of rules, like Water Tanker, for instance, that's clearly a game which is very accessible and has commercial value because of its accessibility.
But we didn't create it to be commercial.
No,
that was my
point.
You
can't do that. You can't do that. You can't approach the design like that.
Yeah.
You have to believe 100% in the project. You have to be inspired by it. There's nothing inspiring in a balance sheet. There's nothing inspiring in creating a spreadsheet and working out how that £40,000 is broken down. The inspiration is about the joy of the game, the pleasure, the sheer energy that comes out of being inspired. You really feel like you're riding a wave of enthusiasm and energy.
So back to Dice Dad's point, I mean, just to wrap up, I think what we're saying, or what you're saying, as game creators, as game commercial directors, if you like, the creative process.
I like the sound of that, commercial director.
The creative process is really front and centre at all times. It's allied or has a cousin in the commercial process, and the commercial process comes in to identify what the physicality of the rules or the visual elements of the rules might be. But ultimately, the thing which you're really looking for as regards the rules is a creative process. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about was not just the creative process in isolation, because I don't think that your rules exist in a vacuum. The other thing which I think is interesting, and always been interested in what you do with the rules, is the way that there's a community project which is going on there as well, which to me has always seemed more important than the commercial project. I think over the recent years, commercially, your rules have become slicker, they've become visually more attractive. There's more physical elements, such as all the tokens and sets like that. But to me, one of the hearts of the whole sort of thing that you try to create, and certainly about the rules, has been the community element. And I don't think that exists without playtesting. And I think that the games days we've had, the way that you've sent out the rules to other sort of wargamers throughout the world, that's been a big contributory factor in how good the rules have when you've got to the commercial step of launching them. I wanted you both to talk about that a little bit.
Nick?
Well, playtesting is the key point at which the creativity contacts other people for the first time.
It's a horrible feeling, actually.
Is where you take that core idea and you put it out to somebody else and you say, please be
yeah,
nice.
you're waiting for them to go, this is bloody awful.
But there's two sides to it, aren't there? Because what you want, you really want them to like it. But actually, you really also want them to be completely honest with you about how they experience it and what they find from it. And that's actually,
you can't have sycophantic playtesters.
No, you've got to have a certain type of person to play. We do get contacted by a lot of people saying, "Can I playtest your rules? Can I playtest your rules?" We are quite choosy about, or quite picky. Through our own experience about how we do that, because most people want to play the game, want to get their hands on it, want to enjoy the experience and say, yeah, it's great, but what we want is a bit more than that.
It has to be. I mean, we went playtest really early with Infamy, really early, and some of the guys who we had in that initial playtest group of 4 or so blokes I think were potentially slightly horrified at how raw the rules were, but actually doing that has allowed us to get some very honest feedback and has actually accelerated the process right the way through. In fact, at the beginning of this, early on in this month, we were able to put together the 6th version 1.6 of the playtest edition, which we've left with those guys to play out over the whole festive period. And they've all said this is, compared to where we were 6 weeks ago, this has really come on to now being almost a set of rules. I mean, that 1.6 playtest edition is up to about 60 odd pages. I mean, that's a big set of rules already. For when you consider that's just core rules with very few diagrams or anything like that, and no examples and the type of things that we all like to have in a rule set. But you need to go through. Play testing is absolutely key, absolutely critical. And the main reason for that is, yes, we want to get feedback and we want to hear what people like. We're also very interested in people's ideas of what we could add and how we could do things differently. But more importantly, we have an obligation to the people who are going to be buying those rules and spending their money on it, for them to know that we've gone through a stringent design process which has allowed those rules to be tested by people. And also, when we go through to proofreading, we look at getting people on board who are proofreading it in several different languages. People who've got English as a first language, people who've got English as a second language, and people who are Americans who have their very own English of their very own. But it's that play test process that is absolutely critical, because if we didn't do that, we would be effectively mugging people and providing them a game that hadn't been tested, something incomplete. It would be a bit like buying a pair of shoes which doesn't have a sole, and actually it hasn't been done properly.
But you not only help out then, you also help out yourself as well, because if you put... So we like to think that we support our products. We don't just fire and forget.
No.
And therefore, of course, what we're also doing by going through a really stringent process with this is actually making our own life easier, because we're hopefully reducing the pushback or questions or uncertainties that come back into us after we've released it. So it's really important from two perspectives that we get that right.
It's one of the things that I know is most difficult with any project, and it's not just wargames, anything to do with, is the criticism when it doesn't really go ideally right. But that's better doing it at the playtest and feedback stage than it is once you've actually released the rules themselves.
It's just... just standard business practice in any business to stress test the product to make sure it's of good, high quality.
Yeah,
it's not universally done, I'm afraid.
I think because it's expensive and it's time consuming, and there's always the imperative of doing something, and also there's a fatigue which comes with any project. I don't know how you deal with that, but with any wargaming project, just like any other project, you do it for a period of time, and then you've got to push it and you've got to finish it. And I think one of the things as wargames we're not always great at is actually saying, okay, we can finish that. We'll finish that at that point. May come back to it in a couple of years, but we've finished it. We've got to a point that we're actually happy with the game. We've played a few games. That's it. Put it in a box. I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, I think to an extent, once you've had a published set of rules, that is a finishing point of sorts, although the continuing support is another requirement.
No, it's just a different phase. One phase ends and you go into the next phase, which is supporting those rules, which is hugely important. And, that's why we're on the forum every day, trying to answer those questions that come up. Because
you're on the forum. I'm not one that I could put my hand up to.
I'm not, but
we support.
But we have people in the team who are on the forum every day doing that and doing a great job. Thank you, Richard. Not this Richard, the other Richard who's doing that for me.
The other Richard.
Playtesting is absolutely key, and that's one of the reasons when people say to me, when are these going to be published? You literally can't say. Because the way we're doing it is that we play test them ourselves. We make sure that we like the basic concepts and core concepts. We then go out to a small group of play testers, people who we know are familiar with our rule sets. And the reason we use them is that when you go out with a rough and ready set of rules, there's a lot of ideas in there that are not explicitly said. But if people have played a lot of sharp practice and a lot of chain of command, and then you say shock to them, they know, we know what shock means. So they know when it's double shock, it means this or whatever. So there's a lot of incomplete stuff in there. Then, once they play tested it, we're going to now, 1.6 of the playtest edition is then going to become version 2 in the new year, and we'll go out to a wider group of playtesters. And you playtest, and you playtest, and you playtest until, excuse me, until there are no problems, until there are no issues that are coming up. And only then do you know that the playtesting is over.
One of the attractions of the games days as well, in that playtesting environment, I think, which obviously we go around the country, we have a great time, we go and have some beers, we meet some fantastic people. One of the things which I think has been interesting, just looking at what you've done with the rules that you brought through, is playtesting through that sort of contact with people you don't normally play with.
Absolutely right. It's a great opportunity.
All the more recent ones have been through that process, haven't they?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we take them there before they're public. Tanker, we took to Penarth. Penarth.
Infamy. Penarth. This next month, Penarth is going to be the first show where Infamy is going to be on show. We love taking it to Penarth. It's a show that's not lunatic, hectic, and you get an opportunity to chat to people and talk through and play a game. It's a great place to do it, and we love doing it. For example, the Far East Handbook, we took that to play test those ideas at Salute, which is a crazy environment in which to play test, but we got great feedback.
And then to other games as well, where you've got more Lardy-centric audiences. So you took Malaya to Clotted Lard, didn't you? For instance,
big time. Yeah.
So it's to show the new game off, but it's also to get some comments and feedback.
Much more about getting feedback.
It's a bit of both there, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really does work. And it's really interesting to hear people say and talk about. And also the other thing about Lardy Games Days, people play mash-up games, don't they, where they take this concept. So they play a bit of IBSM, run it alongside a bit of Chain of Command. So in the Lard magazine, for instance, we've got Desmondo's.
Yeah, that's really interesting thing.
I ain't been cocked yet, Mum, which is combining Chain of Command without being shot, Mum.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be glad to know.
Yeah. Those people are out there with really interesting ideas about how the ideas that started off in our head can be applied on the tabletop. And this whole process of playtesting and Lard Days is about getting that feedback in there.
Well, I think that's been a really good run through. I hope that has given you a few insights into the creative process itself. And thanks again, both of you, for a very interesting chat. Now, we'd normally take a look at Lard events happening around the world at this point, but today's a bit different. It's Christmas Eve, and as we're gathered under the huge Christmas tree at Lard Island, I thought we might just quickly talk about our festive plans. So, gentlemen, what wargaming fun do you have planned for the Christmas period?
I'm going to be doing the layout of Far East Handbook, which is a big project for me over Christmas. I really desperately need some time off, to be honest with you. I've just reached the point where I feel my batteries are completely flat, but I am going to be spending 2 hours every day. I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock, spend 2 hours working on the Far East Handbook, doing the layout for that, because I'm getting to the point really with my time management that if I want to actually get stuff achieved, I need to book time off work in order to do work, which is kind of a crazy situation, but I'm so busy on a normal day-to-day basis that getting things achieved is often difficult. So I'm going to be doing that. That's going to be number one. I'm also going to be playing as much Infamy as I can. Looking forward to that. Hopefully want to get my Gaulish army completed and my Caesarian Romans. I'm really, really looking forward to getting them on the table.
They will be splendid.
They will be.
Really nice.
Beaut, mate.
And Arnhem.
Nicholas.
Arnhem, yeah.
Another Arnhem Christmas.
No, I'm looking at him.
I've got to do a lot of maps for Arnhem for Nick.
I'm looking forward to this Christmas. Actually,
that's another 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
So 4 hours a day now.
24 hours a day. You've got another 20 to use up.
I have, yeah. Well, I intend to spend at least 16 of them drinking heavily.
I'm going to have quite a gay, more intensive Christmas. I'm going to be my own. I'm closing myself down between I think the 17th of December and the 3rd of January.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'm going to be going into full close down mode. I'm going to be playing games with the family. I'm going to be doing loads of painting. I've got loads of painting worked up, lined up over Christmas. I'll set this time aside to do wargaming stuff. We talking about games that we play around the edges. I happen to know that Father Christmas has delivered a new board game to our family, which we're going to be playing, called Jaws, which is about the film Jaws, which is one person apparently
had to be about eating, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to this. Apparently, one person plays the shark.
Because it's like that Moby Dick or
and
something.
the other people
So
play.
it's
You
Jaws.
have the bit around Amity Island, then you have the game moves to the boat. Apparently, so I'm looking forward to giving you some feedback on how that works. I think that's going to be quite good fun. I want to play that Holland. I still haven't played in its full entirety.
You're going to do a mashup of the two.
Jaws in Holland.
Jaws in Holland.
Dutch Jaws.
I think I had that on Betamax as well, actually.
Looking forward to playing that. So look out for an invite for that because I'll try and get some time.
Yeah, I'd love to do
Well,
that.
we
It'd be
can
great
do
to have a
that.
game over Christmas, if only to get away from my bloody family.
How about you, Sid?
Well, I've got a board game for my family love playing board games, and we've got Ticket to Ride.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
really- it's
Oh,
sort of
right,
like that
yeah,
one,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I bought that for them. They don't know that, but by the time they never listen to the podcast anyway. So,
No.
so I've got that. So I've got quite a lot of
Do
paintings.
you not force them to listen to it?
I enjoy my home life far too much for that.
But you tell them what they've got anyway, don't you, Sydney, in advance?
Yeah, you do.
Like, prepare
Like you've spoiled the advent calendar.
I only did it once. It was an early morning slip. I apologise to everyone. I've got a lot of painting to do. I've got my French cavalry and a few surprises there, which I'm going to be putting on my blog. Hopefully when that gets done. But I'm really looking forward to Christmas. I've had a very hard working year. And it's been really testing, following you two around and trying to keep up over the years. So I'm looking forward to get a bit of time
A
to
break from
myself.
us.
A break, if possible.
Isn't that-
And then here we are, 9 o'clock Christmas Eve. Not managed that yet. Anyway, what I thought I'd say is I hope you both get the Christmas that you richly deserve. I'm sure you will. But before we sign off, I thought, can you just have a feel of my sack, please?
Pardon?
No, not that one. Hang on. No, before you start.
Is it supposed to feel like that?
It's the one that's right, over there, under that tree.
Oh, well, wow.
That's
Here
it,
we
right.
go.
Pass that over.
Yeah.
Pass that over.
Pass
So
the-
it's now
pass the-
time for our Christmas presents.
Ooh,
Pass the booze.
presents. Presents, right. Well, let me see. Who's going first? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, lovely. Right, right. Oh, what are we getting out here? Right, whose is this for?
Well, that's for you, Richard.
Oh,
Look at the
lovely.
label.
Whoa. What do you wrap this up with?
Well, it's
Yes,
a
really
fair
fair.
amount.
Panzers in Berlin, 1945. It's a book, Sydney.
It's a book. Now, Panzers in Berlin sounds like an early 1980s stuff
Betamax
by the
film.
mobiles, or possibly a Betamax film, but it isn't.
Right.
It's all about Panzers in Berlin in
Well,
1945.
That's interesting, actually,
As the
because
title suggests.
two reasons it's interesting. One, I was talking to a good friend about this book only the other day, and he was recommending it to me. And two, I've just bought some battlefield walking books of Berlin, a couple of them. So this, it's full of photos.
Nice.
This would be a lovely accompaniment to a battlefield challenge.
Well, fancy that. A
Berlin,
battlefield challenge
that would
in
take
Berlin.
my breath away.
Wow.
There's a hint there, Sid.
Well, you
But,
might be drowning in Berlin, but you
yeah.
wait until you get the requirement to go and visit the Kit Kat
Right,
Club.
oh, that's lovely.
That's a
Thank
super-
you very
that's
much.
a
It is a
super-
lovely
that's
book, isn't it?
superb book as well.
I thought you'd like
And-
that. You'd like that.
Nick,
Yeah.
oh,
Well,
that's for me.
That's for you as well,
Right.
mate. I think you'll find. You know,
Well, Nick's is larger than mine,
It
which I'm
is, it
slightly
is.
annoyed about.
Well, isn't it always the case? Now,
I like
that's
it.
really thoughtful. Catan. Trade, build, settle. If only that said trade, build, settle, invade, that would be more my type of...
Well, that's-
but
that's
that is, do
following
you
on.
know what? My daughter was saying to me the other day, she'd like a board game to play at Christmas. She said, have we got Monopoly? And I said, well, it might be nice to play something a bit more modern than Monopoly, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Catan's a favourite in our family
Is
as
it?
well.
Is it?
Really is. The kids love it. Yeah,
And the
really.
kids love it.
Yeah, we play it in our household. It goes down well. And the great thing about it is it doesn't take forever.
It doesn't take forever. It
You
takes
know,
about an hour
Really?
and a bit.
Yeah, about an hour and a bit. Or you
Oh,
can
that's even
really
the
good.
half-wits I live with have got an attention span that can cover that.
It's great with 4 people as well.
Right.
Really, really good.
Well, that's handy because there are 4 of us in our family.
We'd noticed that when
Yeah.
we discussed buying you these presents before.
Right.
you get to trade and share resources and build roads. You get an award for the longest road, which you'll enjoy.
Right. Well, that's very kind of you, chaps. Thank you. And I'm going to give you your presents,
Wow.
Nicholas.
Yeah.
Look at this. Put that mince
see.
pie down, Nick.
Yeah.
Oh, I say it feels rather heavy.
It does,
Feels
doesn't
like,
it? It's not a house brick.
No, it's about the size of a box of.
It's about the size of a book, mate.
book.
And there's a
Well, I
reason
think
for that.
Nick was hoping it was a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you've got this one, but
this book is about a campaign that I am looking at next.
you said
Yep.
on one of the Advent calendars that
Yep.
you were interested in pursuing the British Army's progress after Arnhem into Germany.
Yep.
And I thought this book looked like it did
Yep.
just that.
Yeah.
What's it called? It's called
It's
something
called An Eclipse Without a Future, The Battles for North Germany, 1945, by a guy called Ulrich Saft.
It was a German
Who is a
geezer.
German geezer, I say, judging by that uniform.
Yeah.
At the
He's a
Bundeswehr
colonel in the
outside.
Bundeswehr. By that
And this is very detailed.
It's a handsome book, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is very detailed. I thought you'd like that
Excellent.
detail in
Yeah.
terms of putting together. Look at this. This is perfect for scenarios. isn't
Yeah,
it?
there's some really. Well, I think this the British push into northern Germany. Actually, there isn't a lot around in terms of war.
No,
It's
no.
not one we tend to do. But I thought with
No.
the Empress miniatures
Yeah.
having their excellent range of late war Brits, and the fact that I've been building up my British, the Recce guys especially, these actions where they're pushing into northern Germany. Here we got a fantastic map. 14th of April. Glasgow Highlanders pushing around the town of Nettlecamp. Really detailed maps of what the movements are, and a detailed. The British Army Reconnaissance Company, which has been able to offset its numerical weakness with the support of two more powerful weapons, carried out a tenacious fighting retreat, pursued by Sturmgeschütz. Lieutenant Andling drove at the front. He was 29 years old and came as an NCO through the ranks. The detail.
It's that kind of detail which
really.
scenario.
Thank
just
you, mate.
Well,
make it
that's
Really,
what I thought.
thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate
That's
that.
a great
Lovely
pleasure.
book. Yeah,
Great pleasure.
it's a big book too, 600 pages.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's lots of black and white illustrations so you can
Yeah.
colour them in.
Thank you. Does it come,
And
does it come
here's
with
one
pens?
for you, Sue.
Look, this one for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I
Thank
know
you very
that you
much.
like to do a lot of figure conversion, and figure detail is really, really important to
Very
you.
important.
So I thought this one might assist you adding some detail to your figures.
Thank you very much. Well, that's lovely. I almost bought this the other week, actually.
Well, do you want to
but
tell
I-
the listeners what
Yeah,
it
I
is? Sue?
can do. This is it's a very famous book by C. Willett and Phyllis Cunnington. Actually, don't
Yeah.
say that after a few drinks,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen.
No,
And
too
it
late.
is the history of underclothes. Underclothes through the ages.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
this is just wonderful, isn't
I
it?
thought
There's-
with your
Yes,
interest in nocturnal activities and washing lines,
Wow.
this could give you some ideas of underwear theft through history.
Well, I don't know about theft. I mean, we've got some elaborate wigs. We've got some really quite a bum roll. It's a whole section on bum
Whoa.
rolls,
Yeah.
which
Fantastic.
accompanies the one on the farthingale. That's interesting. Petticoats, bustles, drawers, and waistcoats. Could have been written with me in mind.
Who
Thank you so much.
published it, Sue?
Written by, published by TooFatLardies.
I was going to say Ben Dover Publications, but it's actually just Dover Publications.
Right.
A history of
Well,
underclothes.
I shall treasure that. Thank you so
It's
much.
very readable as well, isn't it?
That's the radio.
Handy pocket guide.
You can read that on the train.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I can. Rather than being completely pissed, people will be avoiding me for other reasons.
There you go.
Splendid.
That's
Wonderful
lovely.
news. Thank you so much
I
for
say
that.
some of the diagrams are a bit risque.
That's why I thought he'd like them.
There's a whole
There'll be
chapter
colouring
on,
in going on of that, I promise you.
There's a whole chapter on corsets
Oh,
and drawers.
Thank you. That's you on the shit list for next year, Richard.
Winter drawers on, as they say.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
Pantaloons, corsets, they're all in here, Sid.
I've given you my present, Richard. So,
Yeah.
Nick, here's. I'm going to give you something which is your present there.
Oh, I'm interested.
So open
Where's
that
the
up.
sellotape? Do you use sellotape, Sydney?
You can start
I
it.
think he's used
They're
super glue. Knowing you, he's used super glue.
They're individually wrapped.
Are they?
You can see. One at a time. One at a time.
Okay.
Right. Well, it's like pass the parcel, is it?
Well, there you go. Oh, there you go. See,
Right.
that's your own
Ah,
special
that is
collection.
just what I wanted, Sydney.
It's
I-
your balls.
Yeah, I've got Sydney's balls for Christmas.
You have.
These are the
balls.
same balls you were talking about in the workshop.
I bought 2 sacks full.
Wow,
Right.
brilliant. So you, €2.95. Our friendship.
Yeah,
no bounds.
Absolutely.
I did scrub that.
Lovely.
I did cross that out, but I can see that.
Yeah, it's when you use the pencil to make it look like €42.95.
Well, I can't wait to slip your balls into my pots, mate.
Thank you very much. I can't imagine
Thank you very much.
anything better.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Every time I
fun.
give them a shake, I'll think of you.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I think after all that...
Hang on, Sid.
Oh, hang on.
He's got a present for you.
Oh, I forgot about my present.
For you.
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
used to being the centre of attention. So what have you
Well,
got for
let
me
me see
then?
if I can find it in the sack first. Right, here we go, Sid. It's right at the bottom of the sack.
Oh, I thought it'd be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, my
Right,
friend. Happy
finally
Christmas to
empty.
you.
Oh, look at these. Oh, let's get this
Very
out.
small.
Be careful though, Sid, because bit of a spoiler alert, but they're sharp.
Oh, great. So that's wonderful,
Is
isn't
it a vampire killing?
It's not another scalpel with blood all over it, is it? Oh no! Look. Oh, right. So here we go. It is a 24-piece set of sculpting tools.
Ooh.
Yeah, look at those.
If
So
I
these-
was a sculptor, but then again, no.
So these look a little bit like unused dental implements. So I could always do my teeth with these as well. These look fantastic.
We could do your
Nick.
teeth with them, that'd be even better.
You wouldn't want to actually, because my mother was a chiropodist, and these were actually the ones that she used to use to get corns out of people's feet. And because she's dead, I let Nick have them for a £5.
I think she just had her patients in the chair the wrong way up.
Well, whether it's mouth or feet or foot and
Yeah.
mouth,
So
I don't
don't
care
put
because
them in your mouth.
those look fantastic.
They do look good.
They look
I
really,
like
really
them.
good.
Well, we know you like to sculpt things. You use your 2mm when you're sculpting faces.
Yeah, that's
Sculpting
right.
the whole of the Ottoman
When
army
you're
for
sculpting-
Constantinople.
Yeah, and the underwear. When you're sculpting underwear
Istanbul.
and stuff, Sid, with your new book. When you're using your
Oh,
new
they are
book to
nice. They're
sculpt
lovely.
underwear.
I could.
Well, they're going to be great for
I could
underwear
get a set of
sculpting.
these. These are good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, thank you very much,
Yeah,
Nicholas.
well, there we
You're more
are.
than
That's
welcome,
very,
my friend.
very,
Happy
very
Christmas
kind.
to you.
Well, that's brilliant. And I think with that wonderful present selection, that's all we can squeeze in for the Festive Oddcast. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to Rich, Nick, for their
Pass the booze.
and our other friends who've contributed to the podcast for their time and thoughts in 2019. And a big thanks to my great friend Roger Barraclough and his band for joining us at this busy time. Roger, where are you in Panto this year?
Norwich.
Norwich? Oh, right. That must be Cinderella at the Theatre Royal. Excellent. And I've got tickets for that. That's very good. Right. Well, if you'll just allow me to get behind the Steinway, I thought I could actually play you out with something suitable and festive. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.